Welcome to the Conscious Relationship Uncoupling and Parenting Summit. It's me, Lucia Gabriela, your host and producer. And today we have an incredible woman and a great speaker. Her name is Myola Woods. So let me just read a little bit about her. She is a pioneer with courage who bravely speak about the things that make most of us uncomfortable. Myola specializes in teaching individuals and couples the art of connection, creating and cultivating the choice of arousal to deepen intimacy, sensation, and pleasure. As a sexual being, mother of 4 teenagers, and pleasure enthusiast, Myola appreciates the time constraint, daily and social pressures that can havoc on our erotic life. Myola teaches ways to explore and enhance your lovemaking in everyday life, using techniques and practices that can turn you and your life on. Take your intimate life from ordinary to extraordinary. Have the orgasms you have read and dreamt about. You deserve them. Myola Woods is a certified sexological body worker and somatic sex educator with extensive experience in education, body work, and energetics. So if you have had enough of mediocrity, ready for change and desiring intimacy, connection, and arousal, stop wishing and hoping and start now. Let's welcome Myola to our summit today. Thank you, Myola, for joining us and saying yes to the summit.
Thank you for having me. I'm so thrilled to be part of your Conscious Relating Summit. It's something close to my own heart.
Thank you. So before we dive deeper into this special topic that we have about conscious relating, conscious relate, how do you start yourself? How do you start in this journey of conscious relationship? What brought you here?
Well, many years ago, I started off, I suppose, on being a conscious being and bringing consciousness to everything that I do. And I mean, not that, that often got me into trouble. I often knew too much. I often, I always had a sense, an inner sense, something inside me that thought there must be more. And, I would get in trouble from my parents or from school that said, well, can't you just be kind of happy with what you have, and isn't this just enough? And although my life was enough, there was a sense that there was more, and that there was more than what we could see, and there was more than what we could be here. And I started a journey on becoming very conscious in the way that I live my life, and then I took that into my relating as well, my relationships. How am I with people? How am I with my lovers? How am I with my children? I've got 4 of them, so I have taken many journeys. It hasn't always been pretty or beautiful, but it's always been insightful, and it's always been, I like to, sometimes I think, how do I still have so much, it appears sometimes I still have so much stuff to learn and so many things, but my essence is, when we know more, we know that there is more to learn, and it's that we don't know until we know it.
So we're so excited to learn more about the 3 secrets to relating. Beyond a fairy tale is a new paradigm. So after your presentation, we're going to come back for question and answers. And, well, so excited to really learn from you today, Myola. So here we go.
Hello, I'm Myola Woods, and today's presentation is 3 secrets to relating. So beyond the fairy tale, a new paradigm awaits. This is always, very exciting for me, that given the opportunity to move beyond what we think in our minds, what we, some of the limiting beliefs we have, and we can really go deep and intimate with the people around us. It's very enthusiastic for me. So thank you for listening to my presentation. So let's begin. So some of the areas we're going to cover today is we're going to bring it home. I'm a very practical person, so we're going to bring it home to you. We're going to discover some ways of letting go of the fairy tale, have a little insight on what your fairy tale might be. We're going to have a look at how we can remove the distractions. We're going so that we can have time to really go, really go deep with someone and really be intimate and vulnerable with someone, because that takes a bit of consciousness and a bit of openness of our heart to do that. And we're going to talk about practice time. We're going to talk about how you might include practice time into your everyday life. So a little bit about me before we start. So I'm I've got a mother of 4. They're moving now. They're all nearly into teenagers, between 11 and 18. And without them, this wouldn't be possible. So they are my shining lights. Over my time, I started off as a energetic worker and massage, and moved into education. And I've always kept the two sides, the education side and the energetics, learning, bodywork side. And a long time ago, I realised that what was happening was people would come and see me, and they would have, no matter what it was about, if it was a sore shoulder or a sore knee, there would be something in their intimate lives. And I worked the two ends, that, and I worked a lot with mothers and pregnancy massage and post and before, and it was just beautiful. But I knew that I didn't have enough skills, and so I went on a journey, my own spiritual sexuality journey, and really learned a lot about myself and where sexuality was for me, what it meant for me. And I also learned what it was, some physical skills as well. So to work with people physically in their bodies. So I've still maintained those two sides, and now I've narrowed it right down to my market is really intimacy and relationships with people, so that people no longer have to suffer and tolerate things that they no longer need. That's a little bit about me. And Lucia might have some questions for me at the end. So let's have a look. The 3 secrets to relating. So we let go of the fairy tale, we remove our distractions, and we include practice time. So let's have a look at the fairy tale. So I invite you in this moment to just take a breath. Take a breath. Notice where that breath goes. Does it come in your mouth? Does it come in your nose? Where does that breath come into your body? And just noticing. Just noticing what's happening. And just intending, if you can, just intending to bring that breath all the way down to your pelvis. And then just allowing the breath to come out. And at each breath, you're just noticing what's happening in your body. There's nothing to change, there's nothing to do. Just noticing. You might notice different things happening in your body. With each breath, you become more and more alive in your body, noticing what's happening in your body. And I'm going to ask you a few times as we go through, just to notice what's happening in your body as I say different things. Because often our body allows us information that we don't ordinarily have. So our mind tells us, the narrative tells us different things. But we can also, our body tells us if we're contracting, if we're happy. And we can have lots of information from our bodies. So when you hear me say the fairy tale, where does that live in your body? If you can get a sense of where that is, it might be in your belly, it might be in your heart, and just see if you can describe it. What does that look like? What does that look like? And what color is it? Does it have texture? Does it have a picture? Does it have a movement? At this point, I just want you to get a sense of it. Just get a sense of what that might be in your body. And if you don't have a sense right now, often these things will come to us when we're doing something mundane like the dishes or unpacking the dishwasher or hanging out the washing. So this will come to you later. So one of the things I wanted to talk about is our expectations. So from this place of the fairy tale, what are your expectations? You know, I know some of my expectations were that, you know, someone would look after me, and that someone would come and, you know, be a knight in shining armour. Well, that's unrealistic. So along the way, I have done many things to remove my expectations from what the fairy tale, from what the dream in my mind, because that's really what it is. It's the dream in our minds. It's not real. We've fantasized or we've created something in our minds or in our bodies even that is not true. So if we want to make a different way of relating, then some of the things we can do is like find out what our expectations are. And we can make a commitment to change. So what might some of your expectations be? From yourself and from your partner. My favourite saying is, expectation is the mother of disappointment. And what a world we would live in if we were able to let go of all expectations. And we allowed our lives to unfold, and we allowed our lives. That doesn't mean that people don't make promises, and people, you know, if they break their promise, then that is a different scenario. But most of these expectations we have are not talked about, and are not. Sometimes we don't even know that we have them. Sometimes we don't even know that we have them. So as we sit here, or as you listen, what is one expectation that you have of yourself in relationship? And what is one that you have about your partner that you may not have known? And so now that you've asked that question, you will find over the next few days that something will arise and you will be able to go, wow, this is my expectation and I didn't know. And then you can make a choice. You can make a decision. Well, can I let it go? Am I willing to let it go? And you can make a choice. And if you're willing to let it go and let go of the expectation of having someone to look after you or having someone to go and collect you, look after your emotional needs, then how much freedom will that give you? So be aware over the next few days, now that you've asked the question. And then a commitment. So the dictionary meaning of commitment is the state or quality of being dedicated to a cause or an activity. So in this instance, I'd like you to talk about and think about, what does a commitment mean to you? If we want something to grow, if we want something to be loved and nurturing is the way to get it to grow. If we had a plant, if we put a little seed in the garden, we would come and water it and we would watch it sprout, and every time it sprouted, we would be so excited that it sprouted. It sprouted another leaf, woo! We wouldn't say, oh, geez, it's only been this, and you've only done a leaf. We would be so excited. We can be that way with ourselves and our relationship as well. Our relationships take commitment, both to ourselves and to the other. And in this instance, I'm not talking about a commitment like being married by law or being married. I'm talking about a commitment between yourself to yourself and a commitment from your partner to you, so you know exactly what you're dedicated to and how much you are dedicated, so that you know your strong base to work from. If you're both in 100% committed to being conscious to a new paradigm, then it will happen. If you're only, 25% in, well, then you will have 25% change. It's all about how much we put in, how much we get out. So number 2, remove distractions. So some of the ideas is, turning off the devices and talking about those uncomfortable things. I'm going to go into that more in a minute. So anything that takes us from this present moment is a distraction. So where are you now? Can you feel your body? I'll ask you to take a breath. And just notice what's happening in your body. So turning off the devices. We have so many devices these days. The TV, the computer, the phones, the tablets, the iPads, the PlayStations. There's many I haven't listed here. So finding a way to turn them off, finding a way to have screen-free time and having silence and quiet time, not only for yourself but with you and your partner. It also makes, when I was talking about commitment, it makes a stand that, well, I am committed and I'm going to turn my phone off, or I'm going to, between 7 and 8 every day, there's no phones, there's no computers, it's just you and I sitting, having a chat, having a yarn, doing whatever. The kids may be there, the kids may not be there. But, you can make these decisions as you move along. And talking about the uncomfortable things, often we let things build up. And one of the things I find in my work when the intimacy stops is when vulnerability and emotional connection has stopped. So when people feel, when there's something that is that has not been said, and so I just want to get you a sense in your body. How do you know when something's not said? Often it starts with a little, something didn't work right. Something was a bit glitchy. Something was a bit, that didn't quite feel right. It wasn't quite as open. It wasn't quite as expansive. Like sometimes it's what's not there that you notice. When talking about those uncomfortable things, so in, conscious relating, we have ways, when you're present with someone and when you've turned off the devices and when you've made a commitment to make it, no matter what, then there's a place for presence, there's a place for vulnerability where you can share what's going on from you. From a place of, this is what I noticed, when you said I needed to take the garbage out, it reminded me of when my brothers had, they had more, they would get in trouble when I was younger, and it reminded me of that, and I felt myself contract. And so I want to talk to you about it because I just noticed that that's how it made me feel. It's not to make somebody else wrong. It's about us owning our feelings. It's about us owning what's going on for us. And it's about finding a way to move forward with that so that you're sharing and being vulnerable. I mean, intimacy is vulnerability. The more vulnerable we are with someone, the more we can let down our masks, the more roles in the world we can let go of, the more we can really feel someone. And that, in essence of life, is what we want. We want to be and have love. I've come to I've done lots and lots of work over the years, and I've come to a point where I think maybe the Beatles had it right. All there is love. And until we get there, until, we find what is in the way of that, we will continue to, grow and be vulnerable and love each other. So number 3, what do we practice? So I've mentioned, having a practice session. Well, that sounds a bit strange, doesn't it? I'm with someone. Why do I need to practice? Like what? How does that work? I'm suggesting that in our intimate lives, we set up practice sessions. We set up a time. We set up a space and we practice. And it's a time where we practice our touch, our movement, our sound, our breath. We practice asking questions. We practice our curiosity. We practice our noticing. So when you hear me say practice, what do you notice happening in your body? Does it contract? Does it get excited? Does it expand? Or does it think, ooh, that feels a little bit strange? What happens in your body when you hear me say practice? So practice time. I found the beautiful quote. I love the 4 agreements. So you don't need to justify your love. You don't need to explain your love. You just need to practice your love. Practice creates the master. So for me, practice time is exactly that, where we get to practice, where I get to ask, I get to practice my movement, I get to practice my touch. Actually, my sense is that we need practice time with ourselves, practicing on our own bodies as well as practicing with our partners, our lovers. And allowing them to be. So when we're practicing our breath and our movements together, the idea of practice time is that it's allowed to be clunky. It's allowed to be clunky. And there's a difference for me. I mentioned glitchy earlier. There's a difference for me between glitchy and clunky. When we're trying something new and we want to have fun and we're curious and we're noticing what's happening in our body, then that can be clunky. When it's glitchy, when I find that intimacy is glitchy in myself and with the couples that I work with, it's often that there's something emotional not said. So it creates a glitchiness in there. So I encourage you to be clunky as much as possible and set up a time that is 10 minutes every day, and maybe one of you takes turns. One of you takes turns in touching the other. So you can practice, well, how does this feel? And do you like this slower? Do you like this faster? How would this be better? Because when we're in, when we come to the concerto and when we come to the, concerto, I've got a big picture of the orchestra for you. When we come to the concerto, we want to be on. We want to be game ready. We want to be alive. We want to be in touch with ourselves. So if we take time during the week to practice, and we practice asking those questions, then when it comes game time, we can be focused on the game. Because often what happens when arousal takes over is we forget. And we forget to ask questions, and we forget to have, we just forget. We're in the moment. And when that's not so good, we find it hard to come back from that place. So if we practice, and when we practice We're practicing with no agenda. We're practicing with no judgment and not having to get it right. Often when arousal is in place, we have to get it right. Like, we have to get this right, because if I don't get it right, then things are not going to flow and we're not going to have a climax and things are not going to end well. So there's this essence of we have to get it right. And when we're doing practice time, we're not doing it for pleasure, particularly. There could be. We're not doing. We're doing it for curiosity, and we're doing it for noticing, just like we would if we were learning a new language or a guitar, an instrument. We would be picking it up every day, and we would be practicing every day, so that we knew what our instrument could do, and we would be practicing it in different ways, in different scenarios, playing different music, just to see, just to be curious, just to kind of get a sense of what can we do? How does this work? All right. So just having a breath and noticing what's happening in your body. And what would it be like if you practiced every week? Practice with yourself and practice with your partner. Well, I just want to take you back to the beginning. Where we're letting go of the fairy tale. And what part of the fairy tale would serve you to let go now? What part? And if it's time, you can let it go. Making a commitment to yourself and to your partner. Let's make a commitment to relating differently. Letting go of expectations. And then what would happen if we made some time every day in quiet, and we talked about those things. We talked about some of those things, our dreams, our hopes, our ideas, our loves, the things that open our hearts, the things that close our hearts. We talked about them, talked about being vulnerable. And if we practiced each week, we practiced together, touching each other, moving with each other, breathing with each other, so that when we came to playing the concerto together, our lovemaking, our intimate life can be extraordinary, because we've put in the groundwork, we've fertilized it, we've nurtured it, we've loved it. And then when it comes to game time or play time or our intimate time, there can be pleasure and mutual pleasure and extraordinary ways of relating together. So this is just the beginning. The 3 secrets I've shared, if you practice them every week, will make your intimate life extraordinary. It takes dedication, it takes commitment. So if you wanted more and you wanted accountability and you wanted more freedom, I have 2 offerings coming up. I have a 12-week program for women starting in October. And so if you want to know more, please contact me. That is for women who are ready to move beyond the stereotypes, move beyond, they know that there's more, and they know that there's more that they could be having, and maybe they've lost their mojo over time, and maybe they're not quite sure who they are anymore, but they know that there's more, and they know that they're essential, succulent, sexy, soulful woman, and they want that. So that's my Orgasm Mastery 12-week program that will have both learnings, group learnings and group coachings every week in a private environment. So message me if you would like to know about that. If you're ready for the couples program, I have the Pleasure Code. I'm the founder of the Pleasure Code. And for me, that's couples who have a strong connection, but maybe have slipped into friends instead of lovers. Maybe have slipped into, well, you know, it's been so long now, I don't really know how to make it back, and it's okay as it is. You know, we're okay, we're doing all right, things are okay. And, you know, people, often these are the people that everyone thinks is, you know, has the perfect relationship. So if you wanted to, you know, instead of looking like you have the perfect relationship, if you want to have it, then I have a 6-month program for couples that takes couples in, you know, takes them through vulnerability and intimacy with passion and desire, and they move back to being, you know, we grow from that friendship to lovers and intimacy, and their repertoire expands and their freedom expands, and they just, you know, they renew that joy of each other. It's beautiful for me to watch. And for you, I have my ebook, which is the 5 Principles of Sacred Lovemaking. And there's 5 principles, and each one individually has a set of instructions so that you can take your lovemaking to the next level. I hope you enjoy. I really hope that I'd love some feedback. I'd love to hear from you here, from the presentation. So from the 3 secrets of relating to the 5 principles of sacred lovemaking, I wish you all the success in moving your relationship and your lovemaking to the next level. Thank you very much. That's my presentation today.
Thank you, Myola, for such a great presentation. You touched into areas that many of us forget about it, and it's so beautiful to see that you brought them together and also help us to remember those. And one of my favorite, well, that two that I really resonate a lot with, it was the aspect of removing distractions. And I feel like definitely like having all this technology and all the cell phones around and having it inside of the bedroom, I feel like a lot of my clients, like the first thing that had to get out of the bedroom so the technology. And how do you, when it comes to technology and removing distractions, you know, I know we understand that people are like living life like very, very speedy life. Like they're going through so many things and they have so many things to do in a day. And for so many people feel like so impossible to be without that. Like they find resistant to really actually just leave the cell phone in the kitchen counter and go to the bed, you know, and just relax themselves. So what would be one of the mindset or one of the questions for that individual to act themselves that help them to transcend that resistance of just letting go of technology and just get into the, you know, bedroom without it?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, I think, you know, one of the new addictions, isn't it? You know, we're addicted to being available all the time. And so, you know, asking ourselves, you know, if I turn my phone onto airplane for 10 minutes, what will happen? And maybe starting with little increments. So starting with 10 minutes, starting and then increasing to 15 minutes and then increasing it to 20 minutes so that, you know, that anxiety of not being in touch with the whole world can then start to come up. And what I would invite people to do is once, you know, if we had a thought that, oh, I'm going to turn my phone off and what if there's an emergency and what if there's this, we'll feel that and go, okay, if there's an emergency, what will happen? Okay, well, it will have to wait for 10 minutes until I'm finished. I mean, there's not really very many emergencies that are going to happen. So, you know, start to analyze and start to have an awareness of what the narrative is in our brain, what that conversation is, so that we can start to go, okay, well, that's actually not true. And that's actually, I can let go of that. I can start to actually, if I was present and I took a breath and I was in my body and noticing what was happening, I could let go of my phone for 10, 15, 20 minutes. And what I, find is that once people start to let go, then they're happy to let go for it overnight. Then they're happy to, I think we've just become used to it. And so therefore it's the taking it back again, becoming used to being distractionless, becoming more centered in ourselves.
Do you feel that individuals that have this resistance of letting go of the technology behind and just really enjoy themselves in the bedroom with their partner, or just even with themselves and the pleasure, just being in that state of just sacredness, do you find that many times it's because they have an issue of they need connection at some level, and they find like they think that they're getting it through the cell phones or through Facebook or social media, that they just need that attention, that is not, that they're like more glued to that intention behind it than actually it's one of those needs. Do you feel like it's a need that people have to understand themselves at a deeper level when it comes to like attention and recognition and just wanted to be accepted by many people? That's why I usually see that case happening around.
Yeah, I think that, Facebook particularly is geared towards giving us those feel-good hormones and activating those oxytocins. And so therefore it's then a practice to put the devices away and come home to the body, come home to our own body, and come home to my partner who's with me. And yeah, that's that becomes a practice. That becomes, I need to be here and what is happening in my body. And I encourage people to come when we're in here, when we're in our bodies. That's where the sensation happens. That's where pleasure happens. And for me, pleasure is love in motion. So having that sense of sensation and pleasure, sharing with someone or sharing with myself, it becomes a practice then. And I think possibly it's something we're currently relearning, correct? I agree with you.
And I mentioned it because it's something that is happening at a very big scale, that especially now that we have technology at a very young age, and even the kids, when they're talking about parenting in the summit too, we see they hook into the computer devices and they losing the aspect of connection with other individuals and even with the parent. And sometimes I can say like, I'm not a saint on that, but sometimes I even find myself that I was like, I work for myself another time. So it's like, because it's a very interesting dynamic of just getting back into your center, getting back into your body, getting back into the practices of connection every time. So it is important to talk about it and to find ways without shame and without guilt to help those individuals who are hooked into it and they have a hard time to get out. So when it comes to individuals and couples, how do you feel a partner should invite the other to let go? Because it can become very frustrating for somebody that you're here, you're in your body, you're present, and you want that intimacy, and your partner is not there, it's not at that level. And how do you actually navigate? Like let's say myself, I can navigate with a partner that it is like so hooked in technology that it's having such a resistance, having a hard time with letting it go. How can we communicate that? Like if there's any trick or advice that you have for ourselves and the audience, like.
Yeah, well, I would have kind of two ways. If you could speak to it very vulnerably and say, I would like us to have some time with no TVs or no distractions or the phones away. We leave the phones in the lounge room when we go to the bedroom, or and speak to it like that, because I want to have undivided attention with you and I want to share really beautiful space with you. Like, so telling people why you want something is often not just, you on your phone too long and it drives me crazy. But that's often not what we're wanting. What we're wanting is something deeper. We're wanting a connection. So I say I want to connect with you and know that you're here with just me. I want to know that. And then once you also set up an agreement, when we go to bed or we have our practice time, or then there's no phones, there's no distractions, and then once that agreement is set by both parties, you can then say, well, didn't we say there was no distractions, no things and you can kind of, without saying, I told you this would happen, this is not how it always is, all of those things, without taking all of that in, we can say, didn't we make an agreement that there'd be no, and so everybody knows exactly what's going on there. So,
beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, I know that audience, and they're going to be enjoying that because it's something so simple, but sometimes we forget to really put in practice. And that's the other thing I really love about what you presented today. It's not just creating that sacred space for us to create our intimate moment and deliciousness and get it erotic. And you brought up the aspect of practice, which is critical. Like every master, practice and practice and practice. And many people, what I see is many of us, it's like thinking that we're doing it once or twice or even 10 times is enough, and okay, I'm good at it. So just bringing that awareness that everything we do is actually act of practice every time. It's like a ritual. I like to call them rituals, the whole aspect of practice at a very conscious level. So having that ritual and just very consciously and just being there present for yourself, for the world, for the mother nature, for the universe is delicious. But mostly important, like you pointed out, is no agenda, no judgment, not having to get it right, and also not having it to get it off, which is 4 different aspects of being in your practice, and just be conscious in your practice of having no agenda, having no judgment in that. It just really levels up the standard of that practice. I really, really love that, and I appreciate that. So if you want to collaborate a little bit more on that, you want to share something more about that?
Well, for me, it is the practice. It is, like you say, we think we do something once, and, most of us didn't have, sex education, and most of us didn't have, touch education. We kind of go by what we've learned, and if we don't have any, some of us don't have touch skills, then we need to practice, and we need to practice with, so that we can learn and be curious. And often when we get, put arousal in, some of that curiosity disappears. And we want to get it right, and then we want to have an agenda, we want to do this, we want to do that. So if we take that all away and we have our little practice session, then we can just practice and be curious and notice, well, if I do this, this happens. And what happens if I move this way? And what happens if I do this? And what happens if I move this way? Then there's a sense of lightness and a sense of keeping that intimacy and keeping that joyfulness going through the week. It's not just something that happens on, one night a week or 2 nights a week or whatever. It's something that happens all the time. We're incorporating it into our everyday lives.
Fascinating. 3 secrets. I love them. They're so much useful and practical. And what would be one of the secrets that you shared right now that our audience could apply today, and if they're consistent to it, I would say just one of them with consistency will help them to bring their relationship to the next level?
Practice.
I felt that you weren't going to say that one.
Practice.
Awesome. Practice, make the master. And I really love the verse that you recited. So it was beautiful. So thank you so much, Mila. It was such a wonderful presentation. I really appreciate you. Thank you for being in our summit today and sharing your amazing wisdom with our community. If you have any few words of wisdom you would like to share before we go, but also how we can find you again.
Okay, so thank you for having me. It's been great. Loved it. And you can find me on eroticcoaching.com.au. And if I have words of wisdom, they would be, follow the pleasure.
Follow the pleasure. Delicious. Thank you so much, Mila, again. I appreciate you, and see you next time. And for all of you amazing community, thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you in our next episode of the Conscious Relationship and Coupling and Parenting Summit. See you next time. Bye.